Hello, this is Sarah Braasch. Welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to talk about why I'm going to vote for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. And I know that may shock some people, and I just want to say up front that I know this is not an easy decision for anyone. And I have very definitive reasons, dispositive reasons why I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And I wanted to talk about why. So I feel definitely that it is a completely legitimate position to feel that the Democrats are the greater threat to our democratic institutions. I absolutely feel this way. I feel that the Democrats are the greater threat to our democratic institutions. So this is above and beyond the fact that, of course, I would never vote for Joe Biden because Biden's campaign almost drove me to suicide multiple times in recent months. In January 2020, Biden's campaign co-chair, U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond, grossly defamed me as something akin to a genocidal villain who tries to murder Black students on Yale's campus in Yahoo News in an article written by Hunter Walker. And subsequently, in the next month, in February of 2020, U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond repeated this gross defamation of me, and he almost drove me to suicide both times. I tried to reach out to him and to Joe Biden to let them know that they almost drove me to suicide by telling disgusting lies about me, an entirely innocent and lifelong human and civil rights licensed attorney activist. And I also sent an email to Hunter Walker, the Yahoo News White House correspondent, who wrote the article in January 2020, quoting U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond, pushing race and hate crime hoaxes, including the Napping While Black hate crime hoax at Yale, and telling disgusting lies about me that almost drove me to suicide. And he ignored me. He ignored me because he obviously doesn't care about my humanity. He doesn't care about whether or not I live or die. He doesn't care about whether or not he pushes race and hate crime hoaxes and gets an innocent civil rights activist killed for moral outrage, industry, profit, and gain. As long as he makes money, he doesn't care. And Biden's campaign doesn't care either. And U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond claims to be a U.S. Black social justice activist, but in fact, he doesn't actually care about Black people in the U.S. because if he did, he wouldn't push race and hate crime hoaxes like the Living or Not Being Well Black hate crime hoax at Yale, and he wouldn't destroy the Living Well Black movement by so doing. So I just want to make that perfectly clear. So, of course, I'm not going to vote for any Democrat. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden, absolutely, after his campaign tried multiple times to get me killed. And of course, I'm not going to vote for any Democrat because the Democrats also in the past 2 years since the Living or Not Being Well Black hate crime hoax at Yale have tried to get me killed. So personally, of course, I'm not going to vote for any Democrat because why would you vote for a political party that repeatedly tries to get you killed, either by driving you to suicide or incite your murder? That would be completely preposterous for me to do that. So of course, I'm not going to do that. But there's so much more to it than that. So, of course, which is something that has been very much forefront in the press recently, is the allegations of sexual assault by Tara Reade against Joe Biden. But it's not just about him having been accused of sexual assault, and of course I am myself a survivor of sexual assault. It's because he was at the forefront of undermining, of eliminating, of completely destroying due process on college campuses and everywhere. He has been at the forefront, Joe Biden has been at the forefront of the Me Too movement, of the Time's Up movement, of the Believe Women movement, of the Believe Survivors movement, which has as first and foremost as its goal, which is to eliminate due process, particularly on college campuses. Now, of course, this impacted me greatly, and Cornell recently, it was in the press that Cornell recently has made a move to lower due process standards, not just for sexual assault disciplinary procedures, Title IX disciplinary procedures in kangaroo courts, which have destroyed an untold number of young men's lives, but also Cornell has recently made a move to lower due process standards for all disciplinary procedures on their campus. Now, of course, at Yale, I was falsely accused of having perpetrated a racist hate crime comparable to a lynching, by Lolata Siambola and Jean-Louis Renison after February 24th, 2018, when all I did was politely ask Jean-Louis Renison to leave because he had followed me up to my isolated Yale dorm room in violation of Yale housing regulations, and why this was never construed as a Me Too incident, and why I wasn't allowed the believe all women, believe women standard is beyond me. I can't even fathom it. Obviously, well, I mean, I do fathom it. I do understand why. And the reason why is because woke intersectional feminism dogma, race is at the top of the victimhood pyramid constructed by woke intersectional feminism dogma, and race trumps all other victimhood categories, of course. And so if a Black person is accused of racism by a white person, any claim, any demand for due process, any attempt to defend yourself is, of course, just further evidence of your racism, because you are upholding, a status quo system of oppression. So I do understand, actually. But so of course, this whole, the whole Me Too movement, Time's Up movement, Believe Women movement, Believe Survivors, is premised upon the elimination of due process, which is part and parcel. It's a foundational premise of woke intersectional feminism dogma. And of course, what happened to me at Yale, that I was then falsely charged with racial harassment by Yale Graduate School Dean Lynn Cooley, and then they subsequently were they were in a position where they had no choice but to withdraw the charges against me. But at that time, Yale Graduate School Dean Lynn Cooley still banned me from Yale's campus and banned me from teaching at Yale with no due process whatsoever. So I had a zero due process standard applied to me, even though the entire Yale administration and police knew the entire time that I was completely innocent, and that I was a lifelong and entirely innocent human and civil rights activist who would never in a million years engage in racism. This was completely clear to all of them. And in fact, Yale's general counsel in July 2018 admitted to my then attorney that there was absolutely no reason to think that I had ever engaged in racism in any way, shape, or form, and they dropped the racial component of the harassment charges against me. But subsequent to that, Yale President Peter Salovey, at the beginning of August 2018, made a public statement that precluded the possibility of me receiving any due process whatsoever at Yale. And this was before my scheduled hearing, and he condemned me as guilty of racial harassment, and he knew at that time that he was putting my life in grave danger. He knew that I was suicidal. He knew I was in hiding. He knew that I was receiving thousands of death threats and threats of violence, and he didn't care. He didn't care if he got me killed. He didn't care that he was destroying the life and career of an entirely innocent person. So what does this have to do with voting against the Democrats? Well, the political left it has adopted woke intersectional feminism dogma, and this includes Joe Biden. But I don't just think we have to vote against Joe Biden and make sure that Joe Biden loses the 2020 presidential election. I think that we have to vote every Democrat out. I think that the Democrats are the greater threat to our democratic institutions, including our civil liberties, including free speech and due process. What the Democrats have demonstrated that they want to do is, well, first of all, they abhor poor white people. And they don't care if poor white people live or die, including myself. This is a big part of why I was ousted from Yale's campus, is because I was seen as a poor white trash interloper. But also, and the political left, just like at Yale's admins and student bodies, they are every bit the elitist monsters that you would imagine that they would be. And that the political left, the Democrats in particular, have been accused of being. But also what they want to do is they want to not only criminalize as hate crimes your thought and speech that strays even a hair from woke intersectional feminism dogma, they also want to criminalize your thoughts and your speech that stray a hair from woke intersectional feminism dogma as acts of terrorism. They've made this perfectly clear. I was cited as the impetus in state legislatures across the U.S. for grossly unconstitutional hate crime legislation that criminalizes allegedly racist motives, including for calling 911. Number one, I never called 911, and number two, I never did or said anything racist. So I think that just goes to show that woke intersectional feminism dogma is truly thinly veiled contempt, not just contempt, but hatred for poor white people. And also, there were many on the political left amongst the Democrats who then advocated before Congress for federal hate crimes to be legislated as acts of terrorism. And I've been warning for years that this would happen. And what that means is that now this, coupled with the elimination of due process, which is also part of the platform of the Democrats, means that if you are merely accused, as I was, of perpetrating a racist hate crime, which I never did, but I was falsely accused of having done so by the Yale administration and also by Lolata Siambola and Jean-Louis Renison. And then subsequently I was cited in state legislatures as the impetus for grossly unconstitutional hate crime legislation. So actual state legislators across the U.S. Deemed me to have perpetrated a racist hate crime based merely on an accusation, a false accusation by a black person against me, a white person. And then, so the demand then is that no due process is allowed, and you are immediately guilty if you are so falsely accused, and then you are guilty of having done something criminal, of actually having perpetrated a racist hate crime based on a false accusation. And now what the Democrats are trying to do with no due process whatsoever, because they're trying to eliminate due process, is they're trying to say that based on a false accusation of racism, or it could be a false accusation of racial harassment, as it was in my case, or a false accusation of sexual harassment or a sexual assault, as it has been under the Title IX kangaroo courts, you're now construed as being a white nationalist terrorist based on a false accusation of racism, and you are going to be construed without due process as being guilty of an act of terrorism, being guilty of an act of white national terrorism. This is the plan, and I'm not pulling this out of thin air. what they're doing. This is what they're saying. They are proudly saying this in the press. They are proudly doing this, citing me as the reason for their doing this. So, I mean, the facts are what the facts are, you know. So this is what is happening, and this is why we really need to vote out every single Democrat at every single level, local, state, and national. This is why I strongly advise you against voting for Joe Biden. And I strongly advise you to vote for Trump. If you don't want what happened to me to happen to your child when you send them off to college, to have their life destroyed, to have them, you know, maybe commit suicide because they've been falsely accused of racial harassment or sexual harassment, you know, to have them be called a Nazi, to have them be, you know, vilified on a global scale as I was, defamed on a global scale in the fake news press, by the political left, by their own administration, by their own school president. If you don't want this to happen to your child, what happened to me at Yale, and what happened to me in the fake news press, then I urge you in the strongest terms to please vote against Joe Biden, to please vote for Donald Trump, and to please vote every Democrat out across the board at every level. They are absolutely 100% the greater threat to our democratic institutions, and I am the proof of that. I am 100% the proof of that. So, and I don't know how much more proof that you need to know what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy our democratic institutions, including due process and free speech, which are the very cornerstone of our democracy. The very cornerstone of our democracy. So that's why I'm going to be voting for Donald Trump. Now, as I've said repeatedly, I know this is not an easy decision, and I will not disparage anyone who feels otherwise, and I'm very free, very open to having a conversation about this with anyone, and I will not allow anyone to disparage you on my, social media platforms on Facebook and Twitter. I don't even look, I'll be honest with you, I don't even look at the comments on my YouTube channel. I don't even look. So I won't be involved there because I just don't even look at them because it's such a cesspool. But anyway, I just wanted to let everyone know that that's why I'm going to be voting for Donald Trump, and I feel that it is legitimate to think that the Democrats are the greater threat to our democratic institutions. Okay. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for all of your support and your kind words. They mean everything to me. I'm going to have my fundraising links below, my GoFundMe and my PayPal me links. Please support me as I fight to restore civil liberties on college campuses, including at Yale, including due process and free speech. And also please support me while I continue to fight against the moral outrage industry and fight to stop them from destroying one more innocent person's life and getting one more innocent person killed. Okay, thank you so much, and have a beautiful evening, and God bless you.